Welcome to Upwards, sponsored by the Microsoft Aspire Experience, where we share stories and insights to help you grow 1% better in your personal and professional life every episode. Here are your hosts for today's episode, Jay Lee and Jake Hewson.
Hello, welcome back to the show, Upwardians. Today, I am joined with my fellow host, Jake Hewson. Jake, who do we have on the show today?
Hey, Jay. So glad to be on this episode with you. We have the fantastic Karen O with us today, and Karen is a business program manager here at Microsoft. A lot of really good insight from Karen on the show. She is a master of sharing and building her brand on social media, and I hope you all get a ton of insight from her being able to share her impact, overcoming the fear of sharing knowledge and learnings as early in career, and really just showing her work and showcasing her experiences on LinkedIn and her fantastic blog. So really hope you all get a lot out of it, and let's go ahead and roll the clip. Hey, Karen, thanks so much for being on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Jake and Jay. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. So I know that you currently are a business program manager here at Microsoft. And I think the best way to kind of start the episode off for our listeners that are tuning in is just, why don't you share some background about yourself, what you're doing at Microsoft, and any of your background leading up to where you're currently at for our listeners?
So I love to get started by sharing a little bit about my personal philosophy. And so that is growing 1% every day through finding inspiration to share with the world. And so I personally love to do this through my career blog and resume rescue service, where I have the opportunity to help lots of people around the world in their personal and professional development. And so that's definitely a lot of fun for me. Prior to joining Microsoft as a new grad last year, I spent my final semester in Singapore. And fortunately, this was all before COVID-19. But I studied digital marketing and business leadership there, which was a lot of fun and really opened up my eyes to global business and what it's like to be part of another culture. And then currently at Microsoft, I am a sales operations program manager, but I am transitioning from this role in Canada to becoming a communications manager at our headquarters in the US. So as you can imagine, it's been a little bit crazy these days trying to figure out the visa process, but hanging in there. And then outside of work, you can find me eating lots of sushi and drinking tons of bubble tea, sometimes while I'm doing a resume rescue live review on TikTok or writing my latest blog post.
That's awesome.
I can definitely give you some bubble tea recommendations when you're in Seattle and at headquarters too.
That would be amazing.
Congrats on the new role, Karen. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it.
Karen, you've mentioned your blog and resume rescue. And so we did a little bit of research beforehand. Absolutely love the blog. Is it called K-Karenism, or do you just call it Karenism?
I just call it Kakarenism, and so some of my friends call me Kakarian or KK a lot. So that's kind of where the nickname came from.
Kakarenism, I love it.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit more about what motivated you to start this blog?
So funny story and a throwback. I used to have a food blog back when I was in high school, and I just loved going out, eating food and writing about my experiences. But unfortunately, it kind of slipped off my radar when I was getting busy with university and all that fun stuff. But at the same time, I really missed writing and having fun just putting words together. So throughout university, I started finding some amazing mentors, and I thought, what a shame it would be if I kept all of this great advice to myself, because they were giving me like such great perspectives and opinions and everything. So I started to start writing again and share my learnings through my blog posts, and then also adding in some tips for time management, because a lot of friends were asking me about that. And then shortly after, I found lots of friends and family were coming to me for resume advice. And so that's how I started out Resume Rescue, which has helped a lot of people so far, from countries like Brazil to India to France. And it's been really interesting to kind of see like how they tailor their resumes in different countries, and how I can help them make it a little bit more concise. So it's just a little side hustle, but at the same time, it's a passion project for me because I love writing and I love helping other people.
Yeah, that's awesome, Karen. And yeah, I mean, when you mentioned different countries, I know, like, looking at your blog and the resume services you offer, I mean, I think like it's getting close to like early in careers from almost 100 different countries that you've been able to help, and tens of thousands of visitors. So it's, you say side hustle, but like I can imagine it is like a pretty big endeavor that you have on your plate. I'd love to know, like, how do you decide what topics you want to write about for other early in careers, because I'm a big believer and I haven't always been good at it in like showing your work. So I know when you were like, why would I keep all this knowledge and these experiences to myself? And I find that myself, I find it difficult to create content because I'm like, oh, is this going to be good enough? Will people be able to relate to it? But a lot of times it's like just sharing your experiences and not worrying so much if people are going to be able to relate just creates so much value there. So I'd love to get some more insight on how you decide what you want to write about, what topics to hopefully add value to for other early careers.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I honestly think it's kind of funny. I get inspired super easily. And like even conversations like this, just reading a little bit about like Jay and Jake, like it's super cool to hear like all the great things that you're doing. And so these kind of nuggets of inspiration really just fuel me. And like I have a list on my phone where I just like write down topics for ideas. And so these are kind of the things that are like, when I have time to sit down, I'm like, oh, here are some ideas I can start writing about, like, what do I feel like today? So that's kind of one aspect of it. And then the other part is I get a lot of requests as well from readers who I love hearing feedback from. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, I really enjoyed your presentation on like digital branding. Would you be able to write another blog post that explores this a little bit deeper? Or other times they'll be like, oh, I haven't seen you write about like entrepreneurship and startups before. Do you have any guest speakers who can talk on that subject? So those are other things that I write down in my little list here. And so again, when it comes down to sitting down and figure out what do I want to write about, there's always something for me to look forward to. And then of course, having conversations is like a big part of that inspiration that I mentioned earlier. So since joining last year, I've had over 200 coffee chats just to meet people all over the world, learn about their career paths, and explore the behemoth that is Microsoft. And so every conversation has those golden nuggets that is just like, you know what? The world needs to hear this.
I know as a parent, you're not supposed to choose your favorite child, but for your blog and the articles in it, do you have any favorite articles that you would like to share?
That's a great question. I think in the past year, like actually decided to write a lot more than before. So the volume has been a lot higher, but I think the ones where I have a guest speaker, those are always a lot of fun because you kind of have someone else bringing in their perspective and then sharing it as well instead of just having my interpretation of it. But I would say that my latest leadership blog post from last year, it was with one of our Microsoft executive vice presidents, Jean-Philippe Courtois. And it was on the topic of reverse mentorship. And I just remember being really fascinated about this concept because I personally had never heard of it before. And if you think about it, oftentimes we think of mentorship as someone senior sharing value with someone junior. However, my conversation with Jean-Philippe really opened up my eyes to the fact that even as mentees, we can give value back by sharing our unique experiences and perspectives. And that actually shapes how a leader thinks or approaches their business. So overall, I thought that was super cool. And to this day, it's definitely still one of my most popular blog posts because I've been seeing a lot of leaders and managers talk about reverse mentorship more. And we're also starting up a program here in Canada for our Aspire community.
I'm a big believer in like building your brand and like I said, showing your work. And I can imagine like outside of Microsoft, building a LinkedIn presence, building this brand and blog presence has definitely helped you with personal growth. And do you think it's helped you in your career and at Microsoft inside of your role with your professional growth, doing these things outside of role? How do you think that's helped you professionally at Microsoft?
I definitely think it has helped me become a more confident communicator. And believe it or not, I'm actually terrified of public speaking. Even networking was something that scared me when I was in university. Thank you. That's really nice to hear. But yeah, honestly, like these were like two of the biggest fears that I had. And I told myself one day, I'm just going to face it head on and keep doing it so that I can become more confident. And so I think that from building my brand through my blog, I've actually opened the doors within Microsoft where HR or managers or other community leaders who I've never even met before have been approaching me and asking me to mentor or host workshops with their early careers. And so it's definitely a blast knowing that I can live and share my passion at work because career development is a space that I'm super passionate about. It's really interesting to me. So I always love like even watching TikToks on it or like reading articles on career development. So if there's an opportunity for me to kind of share that interest with other people, then it's honestly like win-win situation for all of us.
So Karen, what you just said just made everything seem so easy. Like everyone can go out and, set up 200 coffee chats and talk to EVPs at Microsoft and around the world. But could you walk us through a little bit more of your mindset and what changed for you between whether that's tackling public speaking, starting the blog, getting feedback? How did you create a mindset change or build your brand through that?
I think when it comes to like the personal branding part, it was always something that I was unsure of in the beginning, especially when I first joined Microsoft. And I was just meeting these people who are like, they are on top of their game. They have years of experience within the industry. And I was like, what am I going to do coming out of university with like a fresh face and not knowing anything? So I thought like as an early career, it's really easy to feel like you don't have that established personal brand and that you're not smart enough or experienced enough to add value to like a group of executives or senior managers. But something I've discovered is if you found a niche that you're passionate about, you can actually earn a lot of credibility from sharing your knowledge and experiences with others. Because even if the topic is mainstream, like career development or networking, your take on it is still going to be very unique and valuable to your particular audience. And there's billions of people out there. You're definitely going to find people who resonate and will want to follow along with the journey and will like share their journey with you as well. So that's kind of one of the things I've been mindful of. I was definitely like scared of what people would think when I started my blog. Like, are people even going to care about this? But at the same time, it was like asking myself, would this be advice that I wanted to hear 5 years ago? And if the answer was yes, then you know what? I went ahead and published it anyways, because I can always re-inspire myself if I come back to it and want a little bit of imagination or inspiration.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, like I can definitely relate to the being worried if like, what are people going to think? Are they going to get value out of it? And something that I saw from you that I thought was like very vulnerable and really refreshing is one of your pieces when you mentioned like, and again, I know you mentioned it even during this episode, is overcoming your fear of public speaking. And the only thing I think is more scary than public speaking is like public singing. I think it just takes it up one notch. But I think that so many people can relate to the fear of public speaking. And even like keynote speakers that are amazing speakers, everyone gets pretty nervous when it comes to public speaking. But I think it was really cool. Not only did you mention you put yourself in situations to improve on this skill and face it head on, but you actively sought out like hundreds of comments of feedback. And I think it's one thing to like, it can be so scary to improve your public speaking skills, but like even more daunting almost to like get that direct feedback of what you need to work on. So I'd love to ask, like, how did you go about that when you were trying to improve your public speaking? Did you know you wanted to elicit as much feedback as possible? Because like I said, I think that that's something that is so awesome to see, but not incredibly common to just be so open to feedback in a very scary realm, I guess.
Yeah, honestly, feedback is definitely terrifying sometimes, especially when it's constructive. But I am definitely someone who really wants to know where are the areas I can improve, because I know I'm far from perfect, and like seeing people like you or Jay who are so natural at talking and speaking in public, like that's what I aspire towards. And so the only way I can get there is if I ask for your feedback or someone else's feedback to see what else can I do to get a little bit closer to perfect, right? And I think that's kind of like the biggest motivation for asking for feedback, especially when I make it anonymous, because I feel like people are a little bit more honest with you and they actually like point out the things that they wish for a little bit different. So aside from just putting myself out there and doing presentations, I would always put a link to my feedback form at the end of my slide. And I'll just ask for, 1 minute to deliver any feedback. What can I do differently? What can I do different next time? Or what did you even like, so that I know to keep doing that? One of the things that I've learned a lot is take all these pieces of feedback, but find themes, because it can be overwhelming when you have 110 pieces of comments that you need to sift through. But if you can centralize that into like 5 or 10 themes, you kind of know what you need to focus on and then tackle each of them individually as you do your next presentation. So that's kind of one of the areas I found has been super helpful in taking this feedback and then implementing it into action. And then another thing that I really appreciate is getting like the accountability of any mentors or managers. So once I do get a piece of feedback, this is not just for presentations, by the way, it could be for work. I'll keep it in mind for like a future project. And then I'll come back to that person and ask to see if they saw positive change or if they still see a room for improvement. And so that really keeps me honest, and it keeps me like growing towards these new cycles and kind of just getting 1% better.
In a way, by saying that you're getting 1% better and the way that you take in feedback and you even have a form to have people give you feedback, like that's awesome. I just realized that you're kind of making yourself your own product. You're creating your own product with yourself, with your brand, with your thought leadership concepts, and then iterating on it again and again. And that takes so much consistency and persistence. That's awesome. I was wondering, like, are there any habits that you would like to share on how to keep this going every single day? Because I feel a lot of people can share my sentiment where sometimes you just have those down days when you're thinking, what is this going to do? Am I even getting better? So how do you keep yourself motivated?
Yeah, I definitely have those days as well. And I think when it comes to tackling them, it really comes down to both like intrinsic and extrinsic factors at play here. I would say intrinsically, I was lucky to find a topic that I'm really passionate about. So honestly, it doesn't feel like a chore when I'm trying to learn more about career development or even write a blog post on it because, it's a topic of interest. So that's definitely one tip I would give to everyone is, find something that you are actually interested in. And then on the extrinsic side, I love a good challenge. And so being consistent takes so much willpower. And earlier this summer, I decided to try the 100-day challenge where I'd create a piece of content every day. And it was one of the most challenging things I did. But one thing that it really reinforced in me was that if you're not making time, you're making excuses. So that's something that I like to keep in mind. It's like, if I'm not making time to make this content, then what am I doing? I'm probably watching Netflix or I'm probably out eating sushi. And, that's important too. But again, this is something I'm passionate about. So that's definitely one of the things that kind of drills down into my brain every day. And then on top of this, I also love hearing feedback from others. So it really means a lot when someone comes back to me like months or even a year later and they're like, you know what? You inspired me. You did my resume last year and now I got a job at Microsoft as a product manager. And that is just super cool to hear. And it really keeps me going, especially on those days when I feel a little bit lost, especially when it comes to that motivation.
Yeah, that's awesome. And 100 days content every day, I can imagine that was exhausting at sometimes. But like you said, like you have to make the time for it when it's something you care about and you're passionate about. And something that I would just love to know, Karen, I'm sure a lot of our audience members would love to know, like you don't have to give them all the secret sauce because if they want to like get all the info you have to offer, they can go to the Karenism blog and get the rest. But you got so much feedback from like the public speaking aspect. Can you share one nugget of feedback that was really helpful for you going through all the practice and the iterations trying to improve your public speaking skills? Because I definitely appreciate you mentioning that it seems natural for Jay or myself. Public speaking definitely does not come naturally to me. It is, even before these podcasts, I'm just like, I gotta psych myself up. But I would say like the amount of feedback you've gotten from your public speaking, it's something that I would actually love to do myself. So I would love to know any nuggets or a nugget that was really helpful for you in terms of improving those skills.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I actually did write a blog post that summarizes like my top 10 takeaways. I think like one of my favorite pieces or like favorite themes with the public speaking was, making it predictable and setting expectations with your audience because people are so busy, especially in this day and age. There's a million distractions going on. Make it easy for them to know what is coming, how you're going to keep it interesting, and then recap it at the end. Because a lot of the times people might not be paying attention 100% throughout your presentation. But then at the end, if you're able to just show them what are the key takeaways and kind of echo what you've already shared in the beginning and throughout the presentation, it really helps solidify like those key takeaways for them. That's definitely something that I've been trying to do, not only in like my executive presentations, but then in my webinars as well with other early in careers.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. And again, if I was skimming through the blog, but if anyone wants to know all of the feedback and the comments that Karen got, they'll have to go to the Karenism blog. So shameless plug for your blog for anyone that's listening. Like that is definitely one of the blog posts.
Karenism.com.
Yeah, it's sponsored by Karenism.com. That is definitely one of the blogs I would recommend for any of our listeners.
Going a little bit back into history, Karen, how long have you had this blog for?
This started in 2017. So in the beginning, I probably only published like one blog every few months. And then gradually I started publishing like once a month. And then now it's kind of like once a week or like a few times a week. I've definitely been building more of that consistency, but it took a long time to get to a point where I was like, I have the time to actually write a blog post like every day or every week.
Do you see yourself evolving throughout your blog posts? For example, do you see yourself taking your feedback as time goes on, or do you see your advice changing as you get more and more experience in your career?
Ooh, that's interesting. I think if I were to like reread some of my older blog posts, I still find a lot of the points relevant because again, it's not like my advice to the world. It's advice that I've gotten from other people that really inspired me and was relevant to me. And I still find that after all these years, it's still relevant. Just maybe with like a fresher take. For example, with remote work, back then I would talk about time management, like when you're physically there. But then now, how do you manage time when you're using all these different apps, all these productivity, like virtual spaces? So I think that's pretty interesting. You can always kind of like do a refresh of different topics. But at the core of it, these things at the end of the day, they do matter in some way or another, depending on what you're interested in for personal and professional development.
So you're using Kakerenism as a public diary for all the help and advice that you've gotten so far and carrying that through for, the rest of your life, I guess.
Yeah, honestly, I think I would go crazy if I didn't share this because it's just going to overflood my brain with all this inspiration and I wouldn't know what to do with it. So it's definitely an outlet for me to just de-stress sometimes when I have a hard day at work, but then I have a really great conversation with a mentor. And I'm like, wow, that was so inspiring. And I want to make sure that other people know these thoughts as well.
I'd love to know if you have a story around this, around like you have been posting on LinkedIn and your blog for a while now, and you've been very consistent. I know for me personally, I've been trying to be more consistent on LinkedIn, and sometimes I will get a lot of engagement on like a post that I think resonates well, and I spend a lot of time on it. And to be honest, other posts just completely flop. And it's obviously not all about likes or engagement, but wanting to make sure like I'm feeling like I'm adding value. Have you experienced that difficulty of you just kind of feel like you're spinning your wheels where you're like, is this catching on, or feeling demotivated when it comes to putting like, your heart and soul into these blogs or posts, but feeling like, did this kind of flop, or should I even continue doing these posts and blogs?
Totally. Yeah. I feel that way all the time, even to this day. And
really?
Like you mentioned, yeah, like there's times where you post a blog post and you're getting so many likes on it. Other times you post one and you maybe get like one like on it and it's like your mom. And so basically, I think what keeps me going is at the end of the day, it's like, am I sharing it on the right medium? Because maybe I'm posting it on LinkedIn, but it's really for other people who are like on Medium or who are on TikTok. And so that's kind of something that I've been looking into a little bit further. It's kind of like, how am I delivering this content? And is it in a way that's relevant to the audience? So that's kind of one thing I've been thinking about these days. And then at the same time, I try not to get too hurt over like not getting that many likes, because I'm looking at all my other peers who are posting amazing content and like they're getting the likes that they deserve. So, it's just inspiration and fuel for me to do better and kind of see what other people are doing that's making their content so popular or so loved. And then how can I kind of incorporate those elements into my work going forward as well? So I definitely think it's like a learning process. And when I was doing the 100-day challenge, I saw a lot of not a lot of engagement on every single post because I was posting every single day. But then sometimes it was more for me to be like, you know what? I'm proud of myself because I still managed to do this 100-day challenge for today. And I'm just going to focus on the next one tomorrow.
Can you give us a little sneak peek of anything else that's in being workshopped right now, whether that's an article or another 100-day challenge that you're doing?
Ooh, yes. So these days I've been working on like series and finding like people to like guest speak for those. And so what I'm really excited on is like making the Move series. And this is for people who kind of like come from different backgrounds, but transition into the tech world. And so like, I'm going to try to find people who like used to be teachers and now are working in tech, people who used to be lawyers or like came from really different backgrounds, but still like thrive in a tech environment today. Because I think a lot of people are really curious about how do they make that jump. And one secret is not overnight. It takes a lot of time, a lot of networking, and a lot of commitments. But, it's very possible. And we've seen so many people at Microsoft do that.
That's so cool, Karen. And I really think it's so relevant because I feel like today there's so many people that want to get into tech, but it's not even just getting into like technical roles in tech. Like I think more and more people are also realizing like there's sales, there's marketing, there's product, there's HR, there is legal and other business areas in tech. So it's really cool to see the amount of people that come from non-traditional backgrounds and want to get into like a software engineering or product manager role, but also those that come from non-traditional backgrounds. Like when I first started, I met someone that had been a lawyer for like 20 years and was coming into Microsoft and like more of a CILA or legal type role, but not even to be a lawyer. So that's going to be really exciting to see the stories that you have to showcase for those trying to transition into tech.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
You got me excited now.
And if you have anyone to recommend, please let me know. I'd love to learn about their journey and write about it.
So, Karen, one more question for you. A lot of our listeners are early in careers or future early in careers. So for you, who is still considered an EIC, how do you gain visibility, whether at work or outside of work?
So I think when I first started at Microsoft, one of my like onboarding buddies and mentors, he was just like, Karen, what's your brand? No one knows who you are. So how are you going to show up at Microsoft and what do you want to be known for? And at the time I was super intimidated and I was like, oh my God, like I have no idea. I'm starting to learn the acronyms here at Microsoft. But it really got me thinking. And I think how I was able to kind of build more visibility and awareness across the organization was just putting myself out there and volunteering for a lot of different projects, trying to network. So again, those coffee chats definitely helped. But how I found people to talk with in the first place, it was attending a lot of different events, like community speakers, all that kind of fun stuff. And then following up with these people afterwards to ask if they'd be open for a 20-minute coffee chat to learn about their career. And so I think from there, I was able to start and initiate these relationships. And of course, there's still a long way to go in nurturing them as I grow and advance in my career. But I think just putting myself out there, trying to showcase like who I am as a person and bring my energy to the table was definitely something that helped me.
Yeah, and that's always the hardest part, to bite the bullet and muster up the confidence.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially virtually too.
And there were so many times when like people or interns have asked me like, what if you get rejected, or like, what if they never respond? And that has happened to me so many times. But I think the key is just keep following up, because people are so busy and they have a million things going on. So they might have missed your message, or they saw it and they meant to respond, but they never did. And so if you just follow up with them a few times, you're sure to get an answer back.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Karen. Kind of getting towards the end of the episode here, something that we always try to do is leave our listeners and audience with like something actionable that they could do right after they listen to this episode. And I think like you have so much expertise in really showing your work, building your brand on social media, and building your knowledge through experiences and showcasing your value. I'd love to know, what is one thing that you think our listeners could do to stop waiting on writing that first social media post or creating that blog or reaching out to that person they want to try and do a podcast episode with? Something around, you know, putting themselves out there to start showcasing their value out there.
So actually, I'm going to steal this from a high performance mindset course that I took last year at Microsoft. And
for sure,
the takeaway was, what are you going to do today that's going to scare you? Or basically it's like, do something that's going to scare you every single day. And I think that really resonates with me. And it was actually how I reached out to Jean-Philippe. And I was like, hey, I want to talk about reverse mentorship. Would you be willing to do it? And honestly, I was scared. I didn't think I was going to get a response. But after following up, I actually got one. And he was willing to share his experiences with reverse mentorship. And like now that blog post has been seen by like thousands of people, which is super cool. So I think, you know, the advice to anyone who is listening to this is do something that scares you every single day.
That's awesome.
We're going to put that as our title.
Yeah, seriously.
Scary everyday things. Well, awesome, Karen. That's a really good last bit to end on. Scare yourself every single day. Take charge of your career. Build your personal brand. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
It was awesome. Thank you so much, Jake and Jay. It was great to be here and talk to you.
Wow, Jay, that was an awesome episode. And Karen,
yeah,
I feel like gave us so many different insights from her experiences. Something that really stood out to me is I feel like Karen has been doing her blog posts and sharing content for quite a while now. And I really felt like she knows that just through sharing her lived experiences, that is creating so much value for others. And that resonated with me because I feel like a lot of people want to share meaningful content and insights with others, but you can get so hung up on like, is it going to be meaningful? Is it going to be valuable? Like, is this impressive? Or like, do I even have the validity in sharing this as an early in career? But I think once you realize that just through sharing your stories and experiences, people will gain insight just from that, I think you really start to realize how valuable what you have to share out there to the world can be. So I just thought that was so cool that she realized that.
Yeah, and it's really you giving yourself the confidence and that push to cross over the starting line and share it. And you really just need other people's feedback too in order to know whether or not it is valuable. And even if it's not, well, good on you. You shared it anyways. And another tidbit that I loved what Karen was saying was when she was talking about her 100-day challenge. Like 100 days, that's over 3 months. And doing that consistently every day, that's a lot. I think she said something along the lines of, if you're not making time, you're making excuses. And especially with our digital world today, it's just so easy to, after work, after a hard lecture, you just sit back in your bed and scroll on social media. But all that time wasted, you can really make something good for the world, for yourself, and for other people. So I thought that was super motivational.
And hey, thanks so much for joining us for this episode, everyone. And we will see you on the next one, Upwardians.
Thanks for listening to Upwards. Be sure to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform and leave us a review. Learn more about the Microsoft Aspire experience at aka.ms/Microsoft Aspire experience. We'll catch you next time on Upwards.